Take care of mom and dad on your own. If you defy me, I'll divorce you and take alimony. Does he really think someone will follow such a ridiculous demand? I just stared at John in shock and disbelief. He puffed out his chest proudly, smirking down at me. Does he seriously believe I would comply with his demand? Indeed, I had always thought of my in-laws and responded to unreasonable demands for their sake. Despite John, I genuinely believed my in-laws were good people. However, since discovering the true nature of my mother-in-law, any concern or sympathy for her had vanished. I smiled lightly at John. I'm sorry about that. It's good that you understand. Honestly, talking back to your husband makes you a failure as a wife. It's unthinkable to prioritize work over dad and mom. If you talk back again, we'll get divorced for real. Oh, then let's get divorced right away. In fact, I'm already single, aren't I? What? John's face turned pale, and his previously confident demeanor shattered in an instant. He was speechless. And as I uttered the final, decisive words, John's expression turned ashen, and he began to cry. My name is Emily. I am a 40-year-old CEO of an internet-related company I founded myself. I established the company at the age of 26. Having lost my parents early, I worked tirelessly toward the goals I set for myself. That passion always pushed me forward. Decades passed, and I devoted most of my life to my work. While my friends got married one after another and started their lives, I didn't even have time for that. I was constantly traveling domestically and internationally for work. So busy that I hardly had time to rest. Despite this, relatives and those around me expressed concern, but with a hint of criticism. If you don't get married soon, you won't be able to have children. Do you enjoy working all the time? Aren't you lonely being alone? I often couldn't argue back and just forced a smile as I left the situation. However, my hard work paid off, and the company grew steadily. Finally, I could afford to take regular breaks and enjoy some personal time. At that time, I was 38 years old. I didn't have a strong desire to get married, but it would be nice if I found the right partner. It was then that I met John. We met at a baseball game. I casually went to watch a game on the recommendation of my subordinate. And John, who was cheering for the same team, and I hit it off. After watching a few games together, we started going out frequently. And eventually, he asked me out and we started dating. John was around my age, but he was youthful and energetic, introducing me to various worlds like soccer games, video games, manga, and golf. For someone like me who had been all about work, the time with John was refreshing and fulfilling. At 38, having my first boyfriend, I was a bit over the moon. One day, on our way back from a date, John suddenly spoke with a serious look on his face. Will you meet my parents? What? I'm serious about marrying you. So, I want to introduce you to my parents. We had only been dating for 2 months. But John's sincere attitude made me want to respond from my heart. And so, we decided to visit John's family home that weekend. John's parents warmly welcomed me, meeting me for the first time. Oh, John is really lucky to be dating such a wonderful person. That's right. Emily is really an amazing woman. I can see why John chose you. Their warm words made me so happy that I couldn't stop smiling. John also proudly smiled beside me, saying, See, I found a great person at 38. His phrasing was a bit off, but it seemed like John meant it as a compliment. I felt that a marriage with such wonderful parents would go well. And I was relieved that the meeting went smoothly. The only thing that bothered me was that John called his parents mommy and daddy. It was a way of addressing parents that I didn't hear much among adult men around me. And at first, I was a bit surprised. But I decided that it varied by family and thought it wouldn't cause any resentment. John seemed to have a very good relationship with his parents, which is a good thing. Occasionally, it bothered me that his mother praised John excessively. But I found it endearing as a sign of affection. However, it was a bit awkward when the topic of cooking came up. Emily, are you good at cooking? I don't know if I'm good, but I often make Japanese food. At this, John immediately chimed in. Yes, Emily is good at making meat and potato stew and simmer dishes. But it's not quite like your cooking yet. Hey, Mommy, why don't you teach her your recipes? I understood that he thought his mother's cooking was the best. But his wording left me with mixed feelings. Not noticing my subtle expression, his mother happily responded. Oh, that sounds great. I need to teach you a lot for John's sake. And to my surprise, that very day, John's parents suddenly asked, when are you thinking of getting married? But what surprised me even more was John's answer. I want to get married as soon as possible. Life will be easier with Emily. It's tough with a part-time job. What, a part-timer? When we first met, John had vaguely described his job as something like sales. I had also only mentioned that I worked in internet-related work. We hadn't delved into detailed discussions about our jobs. I lightly thought that we would have the opportunity to talk about it as our relationship deepened. However, the fact that he was a part-timer. I couldn't hide my surprise at this fact, and John began to speak with irritation at my reaction. What's with that surprised face? Are you mocking me for being a part-timer at my age? I have a proper reason for being a part-timer. According to John, his mother had always been weak and often fell ill. And 2 years ago, his father fell ill and needed care. At the time, John was working in sales at a steel company. But he quit his job to care for his father and switched to part-time work. To adjust his schedule more easily. It's tough for mom alone with her weak body to take care of dad, right? So, I wanted to do something for my parents. I thought being a part-timer would be better for that. He glanced at his parents and continued. But recently, Dad's condition has been improving. So I thought it's time to find a new job and build a future with you, Emily. I need to work harder for the sake of our marriage. You were thinking like that. I reflected on how I had felt a bit disappointed upon hearing he was a part-timer. John had prioritized his parents over his own job. What a kind-hearted person he is. And now, he's thinking about finding a new job for my sake. Reflecting on our past conversations, I made a suggestion to him. If you'd like, why don't you work at my company? Huh, at your company? Yes. It's a different industry, but you used to work in sales, right? Actually, we're currently recruiting for a sales position at my company. I made the suggestion with his best interests in mind, but John seemed a bit hesitant. I want to work at a company where I can earn well. I want to put mom and dad at ease. Did he think he couldn't earn well at my company? So, I explained the situation of my company again. I showed him the job site, detailing our annual sales of 50 billion yen, as well as the salary and holiday conditions. Listening to this, John gradually showed interest. I see, this might not be bad after all. As John listened to my explanation, he gradually became more enthusiastic and eventually applied to my company. Since we were expanding our sales job recruitment at that time, John was hired immediately. And with the encouragement of John's parents, we decided to get married. It's amazing to be working at the same company as a married couple. It really is. By the way, where is your department located? He still thinks I'm just an employee. In fact, I'm the owner of this company, but John doesn't know that yet. It wasn't that I was hiding it, but I never had the right moment to bring it up. Feeling that this was the perfect opportunity to confess, I mustered the courage to tell him the truth. Actually, I However, John interrupted me with unexpected words. Well, since you'll be quitting eventually, it doesn't matter. Quitting? What do you mean? A sense of foreboding filled me. John glanced at me with a smug smile. Seeing that expression sent chills down my spine. What, do you have a problem with that? It's not that I have a problem, but, what exactly do you mean? I don't have any plans to quit my job right now. Is it because of having kids or something? But my company offers solid maternity and paternity leave. Kids? No way, I'm too busy taking care of mom and dad. What do you mean? As I tilted my head in confusion, John mimicked my gesture, speaking in a mocking tone. I mean my parents. I told you they need care. Oh, your father. But you said he was doing better recently. That's why you started working again, right? Even if he's doing better, they're both getting old. Aren't you concerned? Or are you planning to neglect your duties as a wife? I was confused by what John was saying. After organizing my thoughts, I realized he was trying to push the responsibility of caring for his parents onto me. From his words, it seemed like he intended to make me quit my job in the future to take care of them. I'm not saying you should quit right away. It's easier financially with both of us working. But from now on, we'll be going to my parents' house on weekends. What? Why? I wasn't completely prepared for the talk of caregiving. I intended to help and wanted to support them eventually. But I never imagined being asked to take on all the caregiving. And be taken to his parents' house every weekend at this stage. What shocked me most was John's change in attitude. Before marriage, he was always positive and reliable, but after marriage, he seemed like a different person. The man in front of me didn't seem like the John the first knew. I didn't marry to live with someone like this. I wanted to close my eyes and escape reality, but John's angry voice mercilessly brought me back. You're my wife, so don't defy me. Understand? I couldn't say anything back to John's sudden transformation. This wasn't the future I had imagined. All I could think of was divorce. Even if it looked bad socially. Regaining my life was more important than wasting time with someone I disliked. I quickly got the divorce papers. They were already filled out by John. If you defy me, I'll divorce you right away. John seemed to think that if he threatened divorce, I wouldn't be able to argue back. Every time we fought, he would wave the completed divorce papers in my face. When I apologized, he would smugly put them back in the living room drawer, saying, "Don't forget, I can file this anytime." Recently, since I haven't been defiant, he stopped threatening me with the divorce papers. I don't even know if he remembers their existence. As I began preparing for divorce, I felt no guilt about divorcing John. But the problem was his parents. Following John's lead, we visited his parents every weekend. Emily, thank you for coming despite your busy schedule. It really gives us hope seeing you and John. Her words of appreciation have kept me going in this situation. 6 months into our marriage, John and I started visiting his parents separately. Initially, I made an effort to adjust to John's schedule, even though our available times differed. By the way, the fact that I'm the CEO is still a secret from John. Before marriage, it might have been different, but now I don't want him to know. If he found out I was the CEO, it would undoubtedly cause trouble. Although it's easy to find out with a little research, John luckily seems unaware. John has many issues as a husband, but he's also causing trouble at work. I want to resolve the problems he's caused at the company and divorce him as soon as possible. But what will happen to his mother? She has always been kind to me, and I don't want to make her sad. With these worries, I headed to his parents' house as usual. I arrived at the in-laws' house and silently opened the front door, taking off my shoes as usual. Recently, instead of ringing the doorbell, I would just enter the house directly. Today was no different, so I headed inside without a word. From the back room, I heard John's voice. He was supposed to be at work today, but perhaps something had changed. Feeling a bit uneasy, I walked down the hallway and stopped when I heard their conversation. That girl is so clueless. Her housework is half-hearted. She's serious, but couldn't you have found someone better? It was John's mother, but she spoke in a sarcastic tone I'd never heard before. Almost like a different person. Were they talking about me? The same mother-in-law who always praised me? My chest tightened. I didn't want to hear anymore, but my feet wouldn't move. Sorry, Mom. Maybe it's my fault for not training her well enough. But with some more work, she'll be more useful. Well, for now, she's pleasant enough and brings in money. So I guess we can tolerate her. Maybe we should give her some more time, considering her potential. As John and his mother chatted happily, my heart pounded. They were definitely talking about me. John's constant complaints were one thing, but I was shocked to see this side of his mother. The same mother-in-law who always bowed deeply in gratitude. We often enjoyed snacks and homemade meals together. Despite John's intentions, I felt I had a good relationship with her. I had delayed my decision to divorce, worried about her. But their conversation made it clear I was just a caregiver to her. Furthermore, she looked down on me completely. For now, just keep praising and flattering her. That way, she'll do anything willingly. John, learn from me. An idiot can be useful if you use them well. Hearing this, I quickly left the house. After calming down, I sent John an email. I will be busy for a while, so I won't be able to meet or contact you. I won't be able to answer my phone either. I'll reach out when things settle down. After that, I received multiple calls not only from John but also from his parents' house. I didn't respond to any of them. Voicemails were left with John's yelling voice. Why are you causing trouble for my mother? Come apologize immediately. You don't have a choice. I ignored his orders, knowing I couldn't comply with them. I made sure to avoid John at work and spent my time after work at a hotel. Meanwhile, I steadily prepared for the divorce. One day, when my preparations were nearly complete, John found me at the office. Emily. Where have you been? I've called you so many times. Do you know how much I've searched for you? John was clearly furious. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at me, quickly closing the distance as soon as he entered the room. He suddenly grabbed my wrist tightly. Let go of me. I told you I'd contact you when I settled down. Don't you care about my parents? Do you know how lonely Mom and Dad have felt without you? Lonely? I couldn't believe it after hearing them talk behind my back. My whole body trembled with anger. I wanted to shut him up immediately, hurling every accusation that came to mind. But I was too upset to find the right words, so I just gritted my teeth and glared at John. As I remained silent, John continued. Don't you feel sorry for them? I just got a call that they're hungry. Forget about work today and go make dinner for them. Making me abandon my job, what was he thinking? His parents are capable adults. Even if they need care, they should be able to prepare their own meals. I shook off John's hand and shouted firmly. I have an important meeting today. There's no way I'm skipping it for that. If you're so worried, why don't you take a day off and go to your parents' house yourself? There was no reason for me to sacrifice my important work for them. I couldn't imagine giving up my career for such people. John was surprised and stepped back, probably not expecting me to resist after complying with his demands all this time. Hey, what are you saying to me? How dare you speak like that to your husband? I've been wanting to say this for a long time, but your values are twisted. What's with it as a wife? They are your parents, aren't they? Shouldn't you take care of them yourself before dumping the responsibility on me? Indeed, John's work today consisted of preparing documents and attending meetings. He could postpone the document preparation and reschedule the meetings without much impact. If he truly cared about his mother, he should take the day off. The fact that he doesn't means he isn't that worried. Yet, he forces his unreasonable demands on me. It's absurd and makes me sick. What? What's so twisted? Why should I lower my head and take time off to cover for you? Cover for me? What do you mean by that? Let's get this straight. Listen. Since you married into this family, it's your duty to take care of my parents. If you can't do that, you have no worth as a wife. John blurted out in a rush, puffing out his chest as if he had said something great. He looked like a child. His words didn't scare me. What does worth as a wife even mean? Why should I be evaluated by him? So, what exactly do you expect from me? I sighed as I asked, and John laughed mockingly. You're supposed to take care of my parents. If you have complaints, we'll get divorced and I'll make you pay alimony. Does he really think such ridiculous demands will work? I just stared at John in disbelief. He looked smug, as if he had one. Until now, I had complied with his demands for the sake of his parents. I believed his parents were good people. But now, knowing his mother's true nature, I had no reason to worry or feel sympathy. I gave John a cold smile. Oh, then let's get divorced right away. In fact, I'm already single, aren't I? What? John's face turned pale with shock. He looked at me in confusion. What are you talking about? Did you really file the divorce papers? But how? Yes, I already submitted them. Remember, you always waved those completed divorce papers at me, saying, I can file for divorce anytime. You forgot you left them in the living room drawer? And feel free to demand alimony, but whether I'll pay is another story. Are you insane? Do you realize what you've done? Of course, I'm perfectly sane. We're already strangers. As I spoke calmly, John spat out in frustration. You'll regret this. Talking back to your husband makes you a failure as a wife. I'm glad to be rid of you. Prioritizing work over my parents is unbelievable. Sorry about that. Exactly. Unlike you, I would prioritize my parents even if it meant losing my job. I'm not as cold as you, John said with confidence. If that's the case, he should have taken time off to help his parents from the start. Complaining while pushing all responsibilities onto me is just shirking responsibility. Don't talk to me at work anymore. I should have gotten a job at another company. John's deliberate comment as he left pushed me to my limit. Then, you're fired, I said in the coldest voice I've ever used in my life. John stopped in his tracks and turned back with a, what? Fired? You're not my boss. Have you gone crazy from the shock of the divorce? John sneered. He still thought I was joking. I sighed softly and looked directly at John. What is it? John's trembling body and wary eyes showed he realized something was amiss. I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. The one who's mistaken is you. Don't you even know who the CEO of the company you work for is? CEO? You? No way. John's face contorted in disbelief as he hurriedly pulled out his smartphone and started searching. As he stared at the screen, his face grew increasingly pale. He finally realized the truth. You're really the CEO of this company? Looks like you finally figured it out. John suddenly fell to his knees, trembling and bowing his head. No, Emily. I didn't know anything. Didn't know? No, you didn't even try to find out, did you? I never hid it, but there were countless opportunities for him to find out. Just like now, a simple search on his phone would have shown my name immediately. John never showed any interest. All he cared about was the salary and days off. That's why his work performance never improved. I was never important to you. All you and your family wanted was a wife who would work for free. Anyone could have done the caregiving, right? John desperately tried to deny it, but his face remained pale. No, that's not true. If I had known you were the CEO, I wouldn't have made you do any caregiving. I would have taken care of my parents myself and made sure you continued your work. What a convenient change of attitude. If there was money, you would have hired professional caregivers and lived your life doing whatever you wanted, right? John, unable to respond, just looked down. If John had acted a bit smarter, such a future might have been possible. If I hadn't learned the true nature of his parents. And if John had remained as charming as he was before the marriage, I would have accepted his offer without any doubt. I would have said, I'll earn the money, so you can focus on caregiving. And I would have meant it from the bottom of my heart. If his parents and John hadn't changed after the marriage, that future was entirely possible. It was John himself who let that opportunity slip away. John looked up at me desperately, tears glistening in his eyes. Please, Emily. Let's start over from scratch. We had fun, didn't we? Let's go to different places again. Please. Indeed, you and the places you took me to were always enjoyable. A faint hope appeared on John's face. Then. But it seems like you were just pretending to be someone else to marry me. In reality, our life after marriage has been deeply disappointing. That's because the conversation is over. The divorce papers should be processed by now. I have a meeting to prepare for. I'll contact you about the termination. Please leave for today. I gathered my things, waved to John, and placed my hand on the door to leave the room. But before I could open the door, John grabbed my left hand. Turning around, I saw John glaring at me. I glared back and asked, "Is there something else?" Something else? This conversation isn't over. Suddenly deciding on a divorce. Then finding out you're the CEO, and now I'm fired? How can I accept that? It's too much. The divorce talk started with you. That was just supposed to be a threat. And you should have told me you were the CEO. Clearly, John had tried to control me with the threat of divorce. And while he was shocked by the fact that I was the CEO, he blamed me for not telling him, avoiding his own responsibility. I felt an overwhelming sense of anger at his refusal to accept anything. And his continued attempts to shift the blame. John's jaw clenched, and he ground his teeth. He seemed to regret losing his meal ticket, but that wasn't my problem. You're really too selfish. You should take responsibility for being ignorant and not planning ahead. John's face turned red with anger, and he raised his voice. You're a coward. A CEO of a big company firing an employee just for their own benefit is unacceptable. This kind of outrageous act won't be tolerated. He puffed out his chest as if he were a hero of justice. His thinking is childish. How can he be so short-sighted? Seeing that he couldn't understand even after all this, I could only shake my head. John, seeing my frustration, laughed smugly. You can't argue because you know I'm right, can you? Go ahead and sue me. It'll be you who gets in trouble. I'm too stunned to speak. If we go to court, you're the one who will be in trouble. What are you talking about? I interrupted John's words and started listing the names of employees. Sasaki from General Affairs, Sakamoto from Sales. Misaki and Hashida from accounting, anyone else? I asked John, and he began to sweat and looked around nervously. What do you mean? You know very well. These are the female employees you've persistently harassed. They've all come to me for help. Most of the company didn't know John was my husband. Only my secretary knew. It was under these circumstances that I received these complaints. When I first heard I'm being persistently harassed by Hasegawa from sales, I couldn't believe my ears. My husband had been approaching multiple young female employees. Despite their refusals, he continued to pursue them. The more I listened, the more I was filled with shame and anger. I was just trying to build a strong relationship with employees. Why did you only invite young female employees to hotels? What kind of relationship were you looking for? There were screenshots of messages from John as evidence, an undeniable fact. Your performance is poor, and you're causing trouble for other employees. It's my duty as CEO to remove those who harm the company. But also, there's a report of expense fraud from accounting. Can you honestly say you didn't do it? John looked down, clearly embarrassed. It seemed this suspicion was true as well. Besides the issue with women, he had financial issues. As a husband and as a person, he was disappointing. I was also angry at myself for not seeing his true nature. I'll handle all the issues you've caused before proceeding with your dismissal, so don't worry. This is the end. Spend time with your parents at home. John stood there in shock, muttering to himself, tears streaming down his face. But it was too late for anything. As I turned to leave, John remained silent and dejected. He probably didn't have the energy to stop me anymore. Goodbye. I pushed open the heavy door and left the room. After the investigation, all the allegations against John were confirmed to be true. He apologized to the female employees involved, and then he resigned voluntarily. Now unemployed, he went to live with his parents. Shortly thereafter, John started working part-time again, but an unexpected situation awaited him. While his father required care, his mother handled the daily chores. So John's caregiving burden was minimal. However, when his mother began showing early symptoms of dementia, everything changed. She started wandering at night, and her symptoms became more pronounced. John found himself supporting both a physically demanding father and a mentally unstable mother. I'm at my limit. I'm running out of money. Can you help me? One day, I received a call from him asking for help. If our divorce had been amicable and I didn't hold any grudge against his parents, I might have helped. But they saw me as nothing more than a caregiver. I felt no desire to help John at all. I understand it's tough, but I can't help you. From now on, we are strangers. Please don't contact me again. If necessary, I'll take appropriate measures. After that, I no longer heard from John. I managed to part ways with John. But the miserable marriage made me determined to live my life alone from now on. However, one day, an old acquaintance suddenly confessed his feelings to me. Recalling my experience with John made me hesitant to get involved with someone again. But I decided to trust his sincerity and started dating him. He is also a business owner, and we have great conversations about work. Unlike John, he is an ideal partner. The future is still uncertain. But I hope to continue spending my days with him, living each day to the fullest.